son. Where'd you find this?
Buckle up, buttercups. It's time to get down to business. Oh, yeah. It's the Totally Legitimate Business Podcast. Totally legit.
Yeah, all right, folks. We're back here again once more. It's the Totally Legitimate Business Podcast. Please, if you enjoy the content, if you're watching, like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel. Please. Anyways, today we have one of my oldest friends. We have a very interesting character who has appeared on this show before, but never gone into real good detail about the life that he lives. Please welcome back to the show, Mr. Dave Gashaw. You have an interesting experience in the sense that, like, this is kind of family business.
Correct. Yes.
You know, you kind of grew up around this stuff. So I think maybe that might be, again, we've talked about this on the show before, but we've never gotten to go into this detail. So feel free to get into the most granular detail that you can. And let's just go back to, like, what was it like growing up around this stuff?
It's the best way I can answer that is, growing up all the time. So quick backstory. My mom's dad was a funeral director. And then my dad also was a funeral director. He worked with and bought my grandfather's funeral home and took that over. And growing up was like, I always equate it to My Girl because
Right.
It was a big house. The bottom floor was the funeral home, and then the top floor was where we lived. It was like an apartment upstairs. So literally like the movie My Girl. And I always, whenever I get that question, I always just tell people, well, what was it like growing up? When they say, what was it like growing up in a house that's a funeral home? I always say, well, what was it like growing up in a normal house? Because I was taken home from the hospital, and that was my house, so I never knew any different.
Knew anything different?
Yeah. And obviously, I knew where I grew up and how I grew up was different, but it never really settled in until I moved out of town and moved to Murfreesboro and away to college and stuff like that, and started meeting other people and just seeing the looks on their faces when they heard that story, and I was just like, oh yeah, I guess it is a little weird. So. But other than that, great childhood. It was my kind of my summertime weekend job was helping my dad out. Mowed yards, but I would also help him out with services and make removals and run errands and just whatever I could do. Kind of got me exposed to it at a very young age. Yeah, that was that.
Again, this is out in Kansas, right?
Correct. Osborne, Kansas, middle of nowhere.
What's the average population of that town?
Probably let's say 1,500 people, give or take.
Okay,
it's probably less than that. My high school had 120 kids, and we had the biggest graduating class. I had 40 kids in my class. So the type of town where you literally knew everyone walking down the street.
Sure.
You could be first and last name, tell you where they live, at least one fact about them, that sort of place.
Well, and that's sort of it gives the dynamic of living and working in a funeral home in a town like that, as opposed to the bigger cities that we have gone on to live in. Yeah,
I mean, everyone that's. It's the little old lady from the church or, the other businessmen around town or, these were all people that you knew. So, yeah, put a different aspect on it.
Well, it's just much more personal, and it's definitely it's less I'm preparing this person for a funeral, and more it's like I know these people.
Right.
There's this strange other sense of investment that you wouldn't necessarily get anywhere else. So when you were younger, what were you allowed to assist in terms? I'm assuming removals are like going to pick up somebody's deceased body,
sure,
and bring it back.
Sometimes if my dad had to go out of town, one of the surrounding towns, because that's the thing about that. Every town had their own little funeral home, and everyone would know everyone within a certain radius and whatnot, and they would all work together. And there would be times where if my dad was like, hey, we're going out of town on vacation for a week, can you cover us and vice versa sort of thing. So, there would be times where I would, help out with services, which was just standing at the door, handing out the pamphlets, guiding people or ushering people to their seats, helping set up things like that. And then, if he needed me to go, hey, because my dad also didn't have a crematory, so he mainly dealt with embalming. So maybe maybe 3 times a year he had to do something like that. He would be like, hey, can you take this decedent to the crematory 2 towns over, or whatever it was, or whatever one he was working with, and just do that. Things like that. Nothing too crazy because I was a kid and I'm not licensed or anything like that. So
right.
Just kind of helping dad out. So.
Well, I think that's another interesting too, and we'll obviously get into this more as you kind of progress in your career. But I don't think a lot of people realize it's actually a pretty regulated industry in terms of you have to have the appropriate license to acquire, store, and handle dead bodies, and it's almost like it's low level medical stuff, in how you have to keep things sanitary, and I don't know if you could kind of explain what goes into that and the different tiers of certification to dealing with afterlife care.
Actually, so I'm here in Colorado, and that's the only state where you don't have to be licensed to
really,
to do this work. So I myself am not a licensed embalmer. I've not gone to mortuary school, but I am crematory operator certified, and we can get into that later on down the road. But it's usually a technical college or some kind of 2-year associate's degree, depending on which one you go to. There's a handful of colleges or places you can go around the U.S. to study mortuary science. It's not as obviously readily available as something like psychology or whatnot, but
sure, even though it should be.
Yeah. There's there's schools around the country you can go to, and then you usually graduate from there, and then you'll pass state boards and national boards for what you do, and that way you can operate in certain states and all that jazz. So
you're
go ahead. No, you go ahead.
No, you.
Well, I was pretty much done with that. I mean, standard process for stuff like that. You get your education in it, and then, there's a national boards you have to pass, and then certain states will potentially have extra licensing for it.
Yeah. Yeah. So when, I guess another question I have here is when most people go into this field, are they already kind of dead set? This is the track I'm going to follow. Is every person who is doing this work, are they trying to get all the certifications to do all of it? Or are they just trying to pick a special tract within that and ride it out?
There's definitely people that take different tracks. Because, as far as kind of reference it maybe to working at a restaurant, where you have your front of house people, your your funeral directors, the people who are up front doing the work, meeting with families, conducting the actual services, and then you have people like myself, such as in the back, that
technical.
Right. There's people that do the embalming. There's people that do the cremations or the removals and, the dressings and whatnot. And so I guess some people work better up front. Some people work better in the back. And so, I've definitely met some people who aren't really interested in the technical side of things and really just want to more interact with the families and help them through their hard times and whatnot. And then people, like I said, there's the other set of who I just want to do this stuff, and I'll let you guys talk to the families. So
right.
But people choose different paths. I've met people who, just want to do one side of it and have no interest in the other, and vice versa.
So in your house growing up obviously the mood is going to be somber on the day of a service, but in general, what was the mood in your house? You're a pretty funny, jovial guy. I imagine your parents kind of cultivated that same kind of scenario.
Sure.
And I'm wondering if you can kind of talk about the balancing the seriousness of one with the silliness of another.
Yeah. As far as growing up, it was just kind of your standard, household, I guess, except for the fact that, there would be days, that aspect was always around. There was Christmas morning, there would be a call and Dad would, while we're opening presents or whatever, and Dad would have to go out and, make a removal or, work essentially. And, it would happen at all times or, in the middle of a baseball game. It was kind of very much an on-call business. So we always know that's there. Sometimes the phone's ringing in the middle of the night. But yeah, I mean, we all knew what it was, and it wasn't like super somber and depressing. I mean, it was a lively childhood, but like as far as days where there were services, it was always, you kids be quiet upstairs, no running around, that sort of thing. And because they could hear us downstairs and whatnot, or, go outside and play, go to a friend's house or whatever. So,
Right.
but obviously and when there's families coming over to, meet or do visitations and stuff like that, always just, that's where you like shape up,
Yeah.
So there's that. Don't make a mess of the yard and everything like that, because it was, while we lived there, it was a business,
Yeah.
and that kind of came first. So had to keep up appearances with stuff like that.
So did you have like cold storage there?
No, typically, no, we didn't. Because usually what would happen, like I said, my dad hardly ever had to do any cremations. So it was mainly just as soon as he got back, he would just embalm them and that would take care of that.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
So not really a need for that, but, obviously bigger facilities like the one I work at now has refrigeration and whatnot.
And was it in the basement, or was it just a back part of the first level?
Oh, no, it was the entire basement. I mean, there was an office where you'd meet with the families. There was a music room. There was, the chapel where services would be held, and then, the embalming room. And then actually the casket display room was downstairs in the basement. So it took up pretty much the entire house except for the top floor, and we had an attic as well. But yeah, pretty much everything at the ground level and below was the mortuary, the funeral home.
So your dad bought it from your grandfather, but how long did your grandfather have it?
That's an excellent question. I believe because my grandfather was in World War II, and so I would assume it was shortly after that. My understanding is that it was probably, I probably should have prepped for that better, but it's probably sometime like in the 50s is what I would guess.
Sure, that's what I would guess too. Yeah.
So around there.
Come home from war, and did he buy the facilities of an existing funeral home, or was he ground up? This is going to be my place.
Well, so the building before that used to be a dentist office at one time, and it was something else before that. But the building was there. It wasn't, and it had been a couple other businesses, but
kind of loosely outfitted for what he was trying to do.
Sure, exactly. So there wasn't too much restorations or alterations that needed to be done to the building, but. And actually, when I was younger, we added an extension up at the upstairs where we lived. But yeah, it was a couple different things before that. It wasn't always just a funeral home. So
now, what as a kid, were you at any point scared, or was it creepy, or was this just such a part of your experience that it was just I at a young age, I can balance life. I understand life and I understand death, and I'm able to make my own peace within it.
Yeah, I would say I was able because like I said, you grow up in it, you're always around it. You don't know that it's should be or could be creepy or different until other people or, don't you get scared and everything? And then, I don't know, maybe every now and then it would play mental games where you would, because growing up playing music a lot, I always did that downstairs in the music room of the funeral home. So I was always downstairs late at night, just, toying around. Jamming, exactly. And every now and then, you just kind of catch yourself and you'd be like, should I be scared? I'm down here all by myself in the middle of the night, and if this is where it would happen, right? This is where I would supposed to be haunted, I think. But it never happened. So, every now and then you, like I said, you would just kind of catch yourself but no, not really. It was more of the outside influence of people telling you oh man, I could never do that. That would be creepy or whatever. And just kind of well, I can. So, and that's I think one of the reasons why, obviously, I do the work now is because I can mentally, physically, and emotionally handle it. So, like you said, separate the two worlds. And, at such a young age, you're able to grasp the differences of the two and understand death at a very young age.
Well, I have always thought that was an important thing. Like, you have to, if you want to really appreciate life, you got to understand how precious it is and how quickly it can be taken away and how frail it is.
Yeah.
But it's something that we don't necessarily like to talk about in society, even though we probably should be talking about it more.
Yeah, I definitely think it should be talked about more, because I see it all the time when I will go make a removal, and you can tell the families who it has always just been, nope, we're not going to talk about it. I don't even want to think about it. It won't happen to me. It won't happen to us, sort of thing. And then those are the ones that are the most out of control and, just can't handle it. Those are always the interesting ones.
Yeah, I mean, that definitely makes sense. They're forced to confront it, the moment that the funeral starts, like that they've been putting it off this whole time, and then once it gets there,
it's a little too real for them.
Yeah.
But
I mean, that definitely makes sense.
I always have a phrase that I like to use. I kind of started saying it when I started working this job is, it comes for us all one of these days.
Yeah, you told that to Clint and I use that all the time now. I love that saying.
I mean, at the end of the day, it's going to come for every last one of us. So, like it or not.
Yeah, man, it's the one thing that's guaranteed. Mm-hmm. In a life of question marks, it's the one guarantee.
That's what they say.
So you weren't necessarily always trying to pursue a path in this industry.
No, of course not. I used to get asked that all the time as a kid, so you going to take over the family business? And to me, the answer was always absolutely not, because in my mind, I just associated that with having to stay in Osborne, Kansas. And I was absolutely not. Anywhere but here kind of thing. And so it was never something that I thought about. It was never anything really I pursued or thought I would end up doing. But, alas, here I am.
So when it finally clicks with you that you're going to pursue this, just kind of describe your particular path, and then we'll get into like what the actual actions of what you do. But
sure. So yeah, obviously lived in Murfreesboro and then moved out to Colorado Springs in 2015. And then around 2019 was just, ready for something new, and had, kind of thought to myself, well, Colorado, you don't have to be licensed, and I have a background in this, so, maybe just give it a shot. And so I just started calling around to a bunch of the different funeral homes around town, and then got an interview and just kind of started. And then, one year just turned into 6 years. Actually on Thursday it'll be 6 years with doing this job. So
amazing. You did it.
Yeah, I did it. So, that's really, there's really no grand story. It was just kind of, in the most basic terms, I need a new job. I need to do something else. What can I do?
I already know this.
Yeah, I already know this. Yeah. Let's give this a shot. And here it is. So.
Love that.
Yeah.
Well, it's an industry with baked in job security.
Yep, that is true. That is true. So, we weathered COVID well. So.
Yeesh.
Yeah.
No, but it's that there will always be a need for this type of work. So what do you do now specifically? Mm-hmm. Like how do you do what you do now, and how has how you looked at it changed since you started doing it?
So when I started out, started out at a removal tech position, which is basically what it sounds like. I would, here in Colorado Springs, there's close to 1 million people. There's, multiple calls a day. So that was basically you just show up to work and just run the calls. And same with being on call. You just, we don't work banker's hours, as they say. So It happens all day, every day. And so that's how I started out. And then, probably like a year and a half in, I just started helping out with the crematory and helping out with their process, just kind of doing little chores, and then kind of just started doing it, cremation from front to back kind of by myself, or with very little supervision. And then I think this would have had to have been 2022. The company sent me to Seattle, where I actually met up and had dinner with Clint. And,
hilarious. Shout out Clint.
Yeah, shout out Clint. And yeah, just the regulatory agency is CANA, Crematory Association of North America. And so went through a day-long class with that, passed a test, and now I'm a certified crematory operator, and actually just re-upped that last year. So that was that. And I basically, primarily that's what I mainly do at my job now, but I still have to do on-call and, still make removals and just kind of jump in and help out wherever I'm needed. But primarily that's my role and responsibility.
Sure. And so the place that you work now, you've kind of alluded to it, but it's like much larger in scale than your family's funeral home.
Yes, it is. We work with technically 7 different funeral homes. 5 of them are local here in the area, and then 2 of them are just kind of direct to cremation services. So we work with essentially 7 different funeral homes, and like I said, as far as making removals, we respond to calls within 60 miles. So we have a branch up in Denver, so like if stuff overlaps then there, like they'll make removals for us, we'll make removals for them and whatnot. So
yeah,
but there's that.
So as a crematory operator, what is the hardware of the crematory itself? Like what makes an oven? How do they get it hot enough to incinerate human remains?
Sure. So it's technically called, the term for it is a retort. And
a retort?
Yes, a retort. And it's essentially an oven. The average temperature, what we aim for when cremating someone is 1600 degrees. And it takes about, depending on the size and the container, anywhere from about 90 minutes to 2 to 3 hours. Like I said, depending on the size of the person to, basically incinerate them. We have 2 machines at my work. One of them is actually just brand new, like 6 weeks. We got it put in 6 weeks ago, and there's a chamber, and then there will through hearth, air, and now I'm drawing a blank on the names. But so what it does is, so you put them in the main chamber, and there's a combustible flame that usually ours come down right on top of the decedent, and then there's another chamber off to the side, and it blows heat in there, and then through the new machine we have actually regulates itself. You just punch in the numbers. Oh,
wow.
So, and then it just kind of controls itself. It cools it through the hearth air and, heats it up as it needs to, shuts itself down as it needs to if it gets too hot. And just kind of circulates the air through there in different ways and at different times to regulate the temperature and, incinerate them.
So is the new one does it look more high tech, or is it essentially the same?
Yeah, our new one is more high tech. It's basically got a little computer panel off to the side, and like I said, you just put in the gender of the person, the weight, what size, or the container that they're in, and then hit start, and then it basically just crunches the numbers and does it all itself.
I'm gonna pull up a couple of images here.
Sure, yeah, and I'll do that as well,
so people can kind of get an idea. But So when you're talking about main chamber, it's this
Yes.
thing right here, and then
Right.
you've got another motor back here that's, I'm assuming, pumping in air. Is that for exhaust?
So that one that's where your mouse is, that's for the exhaust. So yeah, we've got the main
Gotcha.
chamber is the one that's, I guess the top one. And then the one underneath it, that's where the air circulates and heats it and cools it as it needs to.
Gotcha. That's
Nice.
so interesting.
Yeah. Let me pull it up.
And like, yes, I was going to say, some of these others look pretty high tech. I mean, it's like, stone or brick guts in the center, but it's much more. So
Yeah.
like, are the ones you work with like this, or are they more like this?
More like that. That's what they have, like the flat front with like the steel plating and everything like that, and the doors that go up.
Wow. That is heavy duty machinery right there. What, so how long does it take on average? Just, again, height, weight, and, body composition vary, but like on average, how long does it take to fully incinerate a human body?
I would say about 90 minutes to 2 hours is about for your average size human. So, and then like I said, as far as containers, you can put them in a cardboard box, which is pretty standard. Kind of looks like a little cardboard coffin. And then our company, through the funeral homes, they offer a couple different casket options or wooden casket options. And so we do that. Obviously, we don't cremate the metal caskets. So, but the wooden ones take longer.
Sure.
But the cardboard ones usually, but yeah, 90 minutes to a couple hours, give or take.
And when so after you're done, after it's completed the process, do you have to let it like cool off before you can take the remains out, or?
Yeah, we sure do. We usually cools down to, I like to try and get it down to about 600 degrees or so,
It's still pretty hot.
still super hot. But yeah, we just, rake it all out, give it a couple, 3 passes, and then there's like all goes down into a trough, I guess you would say, and then you pull that out, and it's basically just all bones. And then you take it to our processing machine, and it pulverizes it to the fine powder.
Right, yeah. So that was gonna be the thing I was gonna say is like, I'm pretty. I don't know if we'll be able to find any pictures. Let's just see how quickly this gets flagged. But let's just take a picture here of. I'm trying to see if I can find some remains of the completed. Here we go. This is kind of a picture. So it's mostly dust, but there's still. Probably, I'm assuming the bigger bones, they just don't completely disintegrate.
Yeah. I've seen all different kinds. You'll be surprised what you find in there. There's been times I've, raked out full femurs, that did not break down at all. And there's been, when we dump it out on our cooling tray, there's been times where there's, you can see like actual, like complete vertebra. And, there's portions of the skull that you can, you can just see all different kinds of, that one right there, the orange glowing one. That's, that one's pretty primarily done when all the, everything's just like a glowing orange. That's when it's all done.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, like I said, we usually load them in.
That's wild.
Yeah, in the main chamber, and then through afterburners and hearth air and everything like that. Just kind of maintains all that. Now there are times, obviously, where it gets out of control. Both machines that we have will shut them. It's about, I think it's 2200 degrees is when they just completely shut themselves down.
Safety switch.
Yeah, and it's happened a couple times. It's scary, but usually they're insulated well enough to where buildings do catch on fire, but thankfully, knock on wood, we haven't run into that yet.
Well, and It's like gas, right? That's the fuel source.
Yeah.
For the flame, there's like a gas line there.
Yep.
Yeah. So they would have to have some kind of safety mechanisms, because that's not just a regular building burning down. That's like a straight up explosion.
Sure. Yeah. And for the life of me, I can't. There are retorts that you can activate remotely. Why you would have that, I don't know. But yeah, theoretically, you could be at home watching the football game and then start a cremation from home. Wouldn't recommend it. It's all the stories I've heard of that end horribly, but it's kind of one of those things. Just because we can doesn't mean that you should.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense. Like, do we need ring integration with these retorts? No, yeah. I don't think so.
No, best done in person.
So in terms of like equipment malfunction, what's the scariest scenario you found yourself in?
So let's see here. I'm looking at one. So our old retort that we'd recently just replaced, you can see some of these pictures here. Ours had like a little trough in the center, and sometimes when you would put bigger people in there, it breaks them down very quickly. Basically, you risk having a grease fire. Yeah. And I would say one of the scariest times was within the last year or so, but we have our trough at the bottom that catches, when you clean it out, catches all the remains and everything like that. Well, the grease usually starts running down in there. And usually it burns off. A little bit would leak out from time to time, just makes a mess. You just, clean it up on the, put towels down and whatnot, keep it from overflowing. But there was one time where I think the person was close to 400 pounds, and it just, that pan was probably like 7-8 inches deep. And when I opened up the little, gate or door at the bottom to where you can kind of peer in there, there was maybe a half an inch left at the top where the grease hadn't filled up, and it was,
oh my god, cutting it real close, and
it was on fire. Yeah, the grease itself was on fire, and so I shut the door, and the temperature was, I don't know, I mean it shut itself off for sure. Yeah. And I thought I'd broken the machine. I was like, what do I do? And it was on a weekend, so called my boss. They didn't answer. Because they didn't hear their phone or whatever. But eventually it all subsided, and it burned all that grease off. So when the cremation was done, it wasn't there in the.
Whoa!
Thankfully, luckily it had done that. But my first thought was, well, what do I do with this stuff? Because you can't just dump this down the drain, because it's technically biohazard.
100%. Yeah.
And it's on fire. So even if I was going to put it in a bio bucket, it's just going to melt right through it. So that was my first thought, was what am I going to do with all of this? But luckily, like I said, it burned itself off. So, but that's probably the scariest. It's always scary when it does shut itself off, but there's kind of that relief. There is that safety mechanism.
Yeah.
So,
right.
Because there has been times where, everything appears to be under control. You'll walk away for like 10 or 15 minutes, and then, you've come back and the machine set itself off, and it's, at 2,000 plus degrees. So
do you have, when you're operating it, do you have to wear like special protective gear, or on the outside? It'd only be bad if you were in there?
It would only be bad if you were in there. Like, you can walk by, you can stand next to it while it's working. But when you clean it out, you need to wear, protective equipment for it. There's like one of those jackets that's like, I don't know, they're like silver, but it's got like the heat protective.
Yeah, no,
yeah,
sure.
and it's
thermal
like super
insulated.
Yeah, thermal insulated. That's the word. And then like a face shield, because you throw that thing open, it's still like blasting out heat. And
it'll give you a burn.
Yeah, and gloves and everything like that, and of course all the rakes and everything are metal, so you have to be careful where you touch those after they've been in there, and just assume that everything's hot. Be mindful of that, and that's with our coworkers, they have to be mindful of that as well. As hey, be careful when you're walking by that. I just pulled that out of there. That's extremely hot, sort of thing. So.
Now, do you typically, when you're working, are you there by yourself, or is it like kind of a crew in that area that does all the work?
Usually we cremate during the day, so there's there's other embalmers there, there's other removal techs there, so we have a crew. It's very rare that I'm there by myself. So
no, but I mean, like, in terms of just people operating the crematory.
Yeah, I'm primarily the guy that handles it. Now there's a couple we usually have on 2 or 3 CANA certified people. So everyone can kind of like rotate through the jobs and help out if they need to. But I'm not the only CANA person there at any given time. I mean, well, except on weekends I am, but on a typical Monday through Friday, there's 2 or 3 other people there that can easily do my job.
So what did you think when you started doing this work, and what do you think about it now? Like, having seen a lot of things, been doing it for 6 years,
yeah,
and having, the pre-existing knowledge of growing up around it, what do you think about it? What are your thoughts on those subjects now?
That's a good question. I think growing up around it definitely helped curb a lot of that at a young age. I don't know. I guess it probably, because of that, it hasn't changed a whole lot over the last few years. It's I've definitely learned a lot more. Being in a bigger city, you see a lot more than what my dad typically saw.
Sure.
It's a lot more than just old age. So it's just kind of, I don't know, kind of developed like we were talking about earlier. It comes for us all one of these days, and there's a lot of strange ways that people die out there. So
you see, with what you do, you see a real serious layer of everyday life that most people have conveniently completely blocked out.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they don't think about this shit at all. And for people who do work where you're around death like that, I don't know. It does. It definitely does change your perspective on it, especially in a big city. You see the things that people do to each other, the things that they do to themselves. You're right. It's very different than somebody's grandma.
Yeah.
They used to bake you cookies. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Being that it's summertime, now that we're coming into this time of year, one thing, just right off the top of my head, thinking of it, before, whenever I saw someone on motorcycles, it was whatever. But now I'm just like, at least they're wearing a helmet, because sometimes they aren't. That's another thing. In the state of Colorado, you don't have to wear a helmet. So we see those people, and yeah, you just kind of shake your head. But yeah, at least whenever I see someone on a motorcycle now, I'm like, you know what? If they're wearing a helmet, I'm like, at least they're wearing a helmet.
Yeesh.
Yeah.
Yeah. I imagine that would be really tough. Car accidents and like, is there any stuff that you've seen that's like, that really sticks with you? Is there any situation that you've come across where you're like, man, it's gonna take me a couple days to get past how real that was?
Yeah, I mean, there's always, after 6 years, you've kind of seen most of everything. So a lot of it is just kind of, just another day at the office. But yeah, every now and then there's something that comes up where you're just like, wow, that was the first. I've never seen that before. I don't know. I think probably the most recent one, was someone I don't know if we could say this but suicide by train, in their car.
Yeah, sure.
In their car. And that was the first time, they came pretty much all together intact, except for, like, from here on down, came in a separate bag. And I was like, wow, that's the first time I've ever seen that come in multiple pieces like that. So, I mean, it's not, I guess, you kind of develop a threshold for it too, where it's pretty much impossible to gross me out nowadays. You know what I mean? And so, but it's not necessarily a thing that's, wow, that's gross, or I almost lost my lunch because of that, or, I had nightmares for a week. It's just like, interesting. I guess maybe that's a takeaway from it.
I mean, absolutely, yeah. It really is just another day, and for doing it that long, you're going to see, by and large, you're going to see the general situations, including the anomalies of car crashes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, what I guess my question there would be like, what would be a thing? Like, because I'm assuming it's kind of the same thing in law enforcement. Like, you might work a job in law enforcement, and for every day it's like the same shit, but then for one period of time you get like this really weird case that's either like big publicity or it just sticks with you because of how fucked up it is. What would shock you at this point? Like, is that bar so high that it's just like, you don't know?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, I guess I would have to just know it when I saw it. You know, like, I guess I'll tell you what, I'll let you know when the next one comes
Please
along.
Please do. I love that.
Because, you know, we see, you know, just to be real, because that's what this conversation is. I mean, you see car wrecks, you see, you know, regular gunshot wounds, you see self-inflicted gunshot wounds, you see drug overdoses, you see, you know, I haven't seen a lot of these, but I've seen like probably 2 or 3 burn victims. That's always an interesting one. And then you get, you know, people who are severely decomposed when they're found or when they come into our care. That's always interesting.
Harsh,
yeah, because, you know, to be real, the smell is undeniable, you know, and you get into things like skin slip, and for those who don't know, it's basically kind of what it sounds like, you know, if you were to grab a hold of someone like that and just their skin just kind of slips off, you know, and they're slimy, and those are never fun, but it's also part of the job too. So those are always interesting. One time I had seen, I think the first one that ever really truly was eye-opening for me was, I'd been working this job for I think like 3 or 4 months, and there was a gentleman who had my understanding was through some complication with diabetes, had basically died at home alone, and it was probably 2 or 3 days before they were found, and the cat had gone up and just started not eating, but like licking,
nibbling.
Yeah, well, it was more of like a licking, because the skin, you know, there was no tears, there were no bite marks. It was just slowly licking over like 2 or 3 days, and it kind of looked like a medical book, because like you could see all the skin was gone, you could see all the muscles, and like it was like basically from the neck all the way up to the chin line, and like when it got to the chin, I mean, it was just straight, they'd gotten down to the bone. Yeah. And it was just an interesting thing to see, because you were just like, I don't know, that always kind of sticks out as like the first time I was like, wow, that's insane. I've never seen that. Well,
and the cat's tongue is like, it's like serrated almost. It's got, you know, beads all over it. So it's like sandpaper.
Exactly.
So it just like slowly chips away at all the soft layers.
Yeah. It wasn't like they were gnawing at it. It was just slowly licking over 2 or 3 days, and like had worn it down to that. And so that was pretty wild.
Yeah, it's intense. I mean, you see a lot of stuff that most people just can't stomach, and I'm interested to know, have there ever been times where like when you work around these things, the realities of life, you can't really talk about it with normal people who don't work around it, right?
This is true.
And I'm sure I have experienced this, and I'm sure that you have also experienced it. There's people who think they have a little morbid curiosity, and once they start to hear about the reality, it like really fucking messes with their brain. So I'm wondering, have there ever been experiences where like just general people want to know about it, and then like watching the joy disappear from their face when they hear about the realities of it?
All the time. And I'm sure you're, you know, with your line of work, you're probably the same way, where there are some people I just don't tell them what I do.
Yeah,
like
for sure.
I find ways to skirt, you know, like, what do you do? Well, you know, I have a weekend job, so
I can't handle the truth.
yeah. Well, or you can just like read on people, like you can just see it in their eyes, like you're too interested to know about this. So So yeah, there's thankfully, there are times where I can, what do you do for a living? Oh, I can tell them about my other job, but yeah, there are times where, yeah, you get a lot of stupid questions. I've had people who who have no experience in my job whatsoever try and tell me what happens at my job because they heard about it in a movie or
on
something
CSI,
like that.
whatever. Yeah,
and yeah, I mean, there's been times where I even try to correct these people, and they're just so dead set on the fact that you're just like, you know what? Sure, whatever. I'm not even going to entertain this conversation.
Totally, dude. Yeah.
Yeah. Like for instance, one time I had someone try and tell me that embalming fluid was the same thing as olive juice, olive brine.
Makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah,
It's just good math.
Yeah, well, I told him, I was like, no, that's not true at all. And they after a couple rounds of this, I was just like, you know what, that's fine, sure, that's, you know what, it is. You walk around life telling people that, So yeah, there's that, and another one that I got recently, which always kind of, it just kind of sat with me, was someone was asking me, when you cremate people, so what do you guys do? You put 3 or 4 people in there all at once, and then, whatever's left, you just kind of divide it up. Let's say you put 4 people in there, and then you just divide the ashes up by 4 and give them to people. And it's just like, no, look, you will only cremate one person at a time. And what always, with this particular interaction, I always tell people what always amazed me about that, it was how cool and calm they were when asking me that, because I was like, would you be okay if that's how we did that? Because, first of all,
they're just trying to think efficiency, dude, come on.
Yeah, and yeah, it's like, no, that's not how that works. And another thing I get a lot is everyone always asking me, you must love the TV show 6 Feet Under.
Oh yeah.
And I never saw it until like a couple years ago. Someone got me the first. You
lived it. You didn't need to watch it, dude. You fucking lived it.
I just had never seen it, and then someone got me the first season on DVD a couple years ago, and so I sat down and I started watching a few episodes, and I couldn't relax and I couldn't enjoy it because all I was doing was thinking about work. And then there was also a couple things in there too where it was just like, that's not how you do that. That's not how that would happen. So I just shut it off and was, it's like a doctor going home and watching Grey's Anatomy.
Yeah, for sure.
So
that's the perfect analogy.
Yeah, you're just like, it's never mind. But yeah, I mean, there's people, who are usually, like you said, can't handle the truth or just have it all wrong. You know what I mean?
So for the people that think they can handle the truth, and even you're like, all right, you can handle some of this. At what is the point where people are typically like, no, I don't want to hear that?
Usually describing decomposition, getting decomp bodies and stuff like that because when we get them from the coroner's office, they freeze them. So, they come, because otherwise it's just awful. So we get them and, it's kind of like a human ice cube. It's frozen solid the whole way through, and you look at them and they look like they're rotting. You know what I mean? And it's, they got the skin slip and, you can see that the places where the skin's turned green or, just all the fun stuff that comes along with it. That's usually, I think, where a lot of people probably tap out.
Have they like when you get them from the coroner's office and they're frozen, like have they been cleaned or are there like bugs and larvae and depending on where they were and what was happening?
It depends. Usually at that stage, they're not going to do an autopsy, because, I think there was a case recently.
Oh, God. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, for sure.
I think there was a case recently where someone wasn't found for like a month. And at that point, that's basically, they're virtually mummified.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, there are times where, and that's another interesting fact with my job is, make the removal side of it. So you get to see every type of person's house. Totally, unprepped, just
State of affairs. Yeah.
State of affairs. You walk in there. And so, yeah, there are definitely some nasty places you find yourself in. And yeah, they have, we've gotten decedents, where there's, maggots, larvae, bed bugs. There's been times where people are, found outside and there's twigs in their hair and, just elements of the weather and stuff like that. So, yeah, you get to see it all, if that answers your question.
No, I mean, it definitely does. And, I think this is another thing, again, like unless you're physically going to these scenes and documenting them, like you really don't have any idea what it looks like. And, I mean, the thing that most people really don't like looking at, much less hearing about, is like scenes of decomp in a person's house. Like somebody died in their house in the middle of summer. AC was on or off, and they were sitting on the couch, so they like disintegrate a bit into the couch, and you take their bodies away, and it's like Hiroshima. The shadow is like burned into wherever they were.
Yeah, it's that's exactly it. That's a real life situation that happens. There's times where you're walking in and you can feel the carpet squish underneath you.
Oh no.
Things like that. And there's some wild situations, or I've seen been in, made removals where someone will, pass away in their bathroom standing up, and or not necessarily just in their bathroom, but anywhere, fall and hit their head on something, and, kind of bleed out everywhere. And so there's that. And a couple curious cases I've seen is, you'll have an older couple with dementia, Alzheimer's, just there, but not really there mentally. And the spouse will pass away, and then they just go on living their life for a couple, 3 days before they even think to call it in. You know what I mean?
Isn't that kind of like the Gene Hackman thing? Like, isn't that what they kind of suspect was going on there too? Yeah,
where one of them had passed away and the other one just went about their business for a couple days. And that was always just really strange to me how that happens. But, you can't try and reason with that kind of mentality. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So, but that's always been an interesting one. And like I said, I've only seen it a couple times, but, they just seem to, I don't know, I can't explain it. They're just let it go for a couple days.
Well, and again, that's the point that I'm making with all that is that that's way more common than I think people are willing to realize. I mean, even like decomp bodies, like that's a very common thing, especially in bigger cities. People die in their apartment. Nobody checks on them in the middle of summer. And it's, I mean, there's a whole nother web that you could go down in terms of jobs in this industry where it's like the cleanup of these kinds of situations. Yeah.
Well, and, as far as like the actual, if there's a crime scene, we're not the ones that go. It would be the coroner's office, and then we get, and we get them when they're done and autopsied, and the coroner will, share what they can if they want, and whatnot. But, this, kind of like what I was saying, you get to see everything, every different types of houses. I've, made removals in, hoarder style trailers all the way up to $4.5 million houses. So,
I mean, you really, it's crazy. You just you see the full scope of there's very few jobs that you can work where you do what we're talking about here, which is see the inevitable realities that everyone has to face. There's very few jobs where you can go as many places and interact with as many different people as in, end of life services.
Yeah. It's eye opening, and also at the same time it's kind of, it's a blessing, I guess you would say, maybe, but it's cool that I get to do this line of work, and because I do get to see that kind of stuff.
Well, I mean, we were kind of talking about it before, but like, I think our society now, we don't talk about death way near as often as we should. Like, what? That's a Western society thing. All other cultures, everywhere else, that, you know, death is a much more a part of the conversation and contemplation of your death. And I've always looked at it as like, you know, the one of the best ways to appreciate your life is to contemplate your demise or your death. And, you know, thinking of the ways that I could possibly go out constantly makes me appreciative of the things and abilities that I still have, and
Sure.
you know, try and make the most of them while I've got them.
Well, you know, because what's to say, you know, you wake up every day, there's 1,000 ways to die,
Yeah.
you know, and as harsh and as cruel and maybe as mean as this might sound, you also get the opportunity to learn from other people's mistakes.
Yeah, sure.
So, and kind of to, you know, come back to what you were saying as far as like the Western world, how, you know, because I think a lot of people's perception of death they get from, you know, movies or social media, or, you know, even there's reality TV shows about the mortuary, or, you know, the funeral business. And yeah, I think some people, even that probably gives some people the wrong impression of what it's really like.
Definitely. I mean, the 6 Feet Under story, that's fucking hilarious. Like, you've never told me that story, but I knew that at some point that has happened where, like, you did not watch it. It was not a thing that you really cared to see. And then after watching it, you're like, this is so unbelievable that I do this for real. Like, well, I don't need to watch this show.
Right. Yeah. And well, and even another thing that I get a lot is, you know, like, what about, you know, scheduling stuff? Like, oh, well, you know, I'm on call that night or whatever. And they're, you know, they're just like, what? You're on call? And then you have to tell people, it's like, yeah, people don't just pass away, you know, from 8 to 5 Monday through Friday. You know, I mean, it's literally 24/7. So, and then, yeah, sometimes it's kind of crazy to watch that kind of sink in with people. They're like, oh, yeah, I guess you're right. And you're just like, yeah, of course it's right.
Never thought about that, did you? Yeah.
Yeah. When did your grandma die? Was it, you know, 9:30 a.m. on a Monday, or, you know, was it 3 a.m. on a Friday? Whatever. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, it's very interesting. So, you know, I definitely see what you mean by it's a gift. You know, you get to see these things, and it definitely, I don't know, for me, it definitely makes me appreciate not succumbing to certain circumstances. That's for sure. So yeah. I'm interested to know too, because you were telling that story about the guy who was like, so you just cram bodies in there and divide it in 4. Have you seen the documentary on HBO called The Mortician?
I have not. In fact, one of my coworkers the other day gave me their HBO login and password
just to watch it.
Yeah. And it's funny because they were asking me about it yesterday. They said, well, what if, you know, they asked, have you watched it yet? I said, no, I haven't yet. They're like, you need to. And they said, well, what if they ask you about it tomorrow on the podcast? What are you going to say? And I was just like, well,
Here we are. You have to watch that. I don't know if you've read any of the synopsis of it, but you have to watch it. Especially with when did that guy ask you that? Was that recently?
Yeah, it was literally yesterday.
Oh, well.
So, I had seen the trailer for this show like a couple weeks ago, and I was kind of like, oh, I saw that there's this new thing. It's on HBO, and then, you know, over the span of a couple weeks, they gave it to me. But yeah, so it's been on my radar for a couple weeks, and yeah, they literally just asked me that question yesterday. So
I'm gonna guess that show is why. Like, you have to watch it. It is so unhinged. It is so unhinged.
And it's, well, because there was an incident like that a couple years ago here in Colorado, which made national news. I'm sure the return to nature scenario. I'm sure you're aware of that. So yeah, and that was close to Colorado Springs, and kind of had to be involved with that a little bit. So it was just kind of like almost deja vu. It was kind of like, is this there's another place that's like this. So,
well, I mean, I and there's a bunch of other examples. I want to say there's an example out of Detroit and Chicago, and at least this one particular series of circumstances was in Pasadena, but like during the lawless times of the 70s.
Yeah.
Like,
okay.
so it's, however, like you can't really get away. It's harder to get away with these things now.
Sure.
Even though it still does happen. But back then, it was just like I guarantee you this is a case that laws were passed. Like after this case got over, they're like, okay, we're going to pass a couple laws here just to make sure.
Yeah. Well, and with the whole return to nature thing that happened a couple of years ago, now the laws they're currently being written to change in Colorado to where you now have to be licensed in order to be a funeral director, be a crematory operator. Now, I have not heard the final word yet, and the last update that I had gotten was basically for my particular situation, it sounds like I'm going to be grandfathered in because I'm already, licensed through the crematory, through the CANA. And it was my understanding that I'm basically just going to have to essentially do some CE credits, to kind of up the, I don't know, the requirements, I guess you would say. I won't have to start from scratch.
Yeah, that's solid. No, totally.
So there, and I haven't gotten the official word on it and how it's all going to go down, but I know change is coming. And
and dude, that's a good thing. Yeah. Like that's, you know what I mean? That's one of those things where it's like people get away with that shit. They shouldn't get away with it. And how do you de-incentivize that behavior again in the future? You pass new laws.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we'll see what happens. But like I said, I don't know the final word yet. It's just kind of one of those things they just keep tacking a few more months onto it as to when they're going to have the final answer. But yeah, change is coming. So, but yes, I do need to watch The Mortician. Yeah,
you'll be fine. And yeah, like after you, the only reason I'm telling you is because I'm almost certain there's going to be more people asking you. I think there's only 2 episodes out, maybe 3. So there's going to be more people asking. So it just makes sense for you to watch it and just to see, because like your situation there sounds like an upstanding business. Right, like a respectable place where people respect the seriousness of what they do. But this guy's operation was the complete opposite. And it was like running for a shockingly long time out of Pasadena. It's just unhinged. Like when you hear, it's almost less about what they were doing that was criminal and more about like what they were doing around the criminal behavior of operating the business like they were. But I'll definitely be interested on your thoughts.
Well, because like in the trailer that I saw, they were interviewing the main character, and obviously put off with what seemed to be his demeanor and attitude towards the whole thing was just like total disregard for the decedents themselves, their families. And I think, just kind of paraphrasing, I think I even saw something in where he's like, once you die, like it's your body no longer belongs to you, it belongs to me, sort of thing, which is, of course, when I heard that was just like, what?
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to watch for sure.
Yeah, there's so many one-liners that guy says where you're like, that is well, and it's like it's more than just the criminal activity that he was doing there. Like once you start hearing, I don't know. There's another situation. Well, we'll just save that. I don't want to spoil it for you, but you need to watch it. It is great.
Sure.
But that's like this shit happens every now and again where a story like this will pop up, and I'm sure that's a thing that is to the chagrin of the entire industry that's trying to do everything above board in the right way.
Sure.
Well,
because that's one thing that we're always taught, and just comes first and foremost is treating the decedent and their family with the utmost respect, and dignity, and no matter their background, where they come from, everyone gets treated the same, and have respect for the dead, and their families. And that's another thing too. You were talking about like what are some things that people bring up or ask questions about, and we were talking about how kind of holding back what you do with some people. And, that's always kind of been one thing is for me, whenever I'm having conversations with someone, as soon as they start getting disrespectful, I always make sure to, kind of put them in check with that, because I'm like, hey, you know what? That's someone's mom. That's someone's, dad or whatever, that could be your cousin, your sister or whatever. So, and it's always kind of funny too, the amount of people who kind of like another thing that just kind of, they take a step back and they're like, oh yeah, I guess you're right. And it's like, I don't know, kind of amazes me that they didn't think about that in the first place.
I mean, it really doesn't, that doesn't surprise me, especially with how desensitized we are to shit now. But
I mean, I can go on Instagram right now and watch videos of the most horrifying stuff.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Or like just hearing about it all the time on the news and, but we're also, we are aware of more and there's more types of sinister behavior, but I feel like most people, again, still just, it's just a story on the news. Like they're not going to have to look at the pictures. They're not going to have to deal with the bodies. Yeah. It's just, somebody else died today. And it's like, dude, there's a whole story there. And it's so much deeper than just.
Yeah. Here's something else for my doom scrolling.
Yeah, well, and people watch, all the shows or movies or TV, and they like kind of what you're saying. They think they understand it, and it's like that's fucking TV. Yeah. It's not real. Did you know it's not real? It's TV.
Yeah,
it's movies.
It doesn't look like that, Yeah,
I don't know. It's a strange scenario.
Yeah, but. Someone's got to do it, I suppose.
That is exactly right. And, well, okay, here, let me ask you this. What are your thoughts on, and I know this isn't something that you do, but what are your thoughts on, like, compressing someone's remains into a diamond? Like, in terms of, like, how you would, as a person receiving a family member's remains, how you would get rid of it. How do you personally feel about compressing somebody's remains into a diamond?
I think stuff like that's pretty cool. I was actually having a conversation with someone the other day, one of my coworkers, about how, you can take someone's remains and blow them into the glass art.
Oh, sick.
So I think stuff like that's really cool. I think one thing that would also be pretty neat is, or I've had the thought, if you could take someone's remains and then like press them into like a vinyl record, that would be pretty cool.
Oh my God.
So as far as, there's nothing wrong with putting them in an urn or scattering ashes or however you want to, honor and dispose of your loved one, or however you want to do that. But as far as doing out of the box or ideas, stuff like that, I think that's cool,
Dude.
Yeah, you might have a better
this
lead on
this. Okay, so first of all, human remains, glass art. Pulling it up here. Super sick. That is super cool.
Yeah,
but then within, that is fucking amazing.
Yeah, I wonder if anyone's ever done anything like that with the at least some of the family, like none of the families have ever. It's never gotten back to me that that's what the families want to do. But
yeah,
I do think stuff like that's super cool.
Well, it's probably still a little niche. Like most people are going to opt for an urn or to scatter them somewhere.
Right. Well, and the cost of this stuff too. I just Googled pressing cremated remains into vinyl.
Dude, that's the next link I have pulled up.
Yeah, the and vinyl-y. Yeah. So I think stuff like that would be super cool,
Oh my god, dude. And finally, that is genius marketing.
Yeah. Over in England. Leave it to the Brits.
Wow. And dude, it's only $2,600.
Yeah, I mean,
you can have 30 copies produced. You can do a legitimate record with your remains. That is the most metal shit of all time.
Yeah. Press a Castle as a Tomb record on vinyl.
Yeah, no, dude, seriously. I know where I'm going when I'm dust.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. I mean, so thinking outside of the box is pretty cool. I've also heard of people like, I don't know a whole lot about this. I've just kind of heard about it, but like taking tattoos, like having them removed, like the skin, removed and then like soaked in formaldehyde and using like framing that. That's pretty cool. The morbid part of me thinks that's awesome. But there's also like a practicality part of that too, where you're just like, I mean, you could just take a picture. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. It is the same thing,
But yeah, I mean, there's definitely ways people are thinking outside of the box from your typical just, put them in a casket and bury them and then just cremate and then they sit on a mantle until the next generation wants to do something with it, So yeah, I'm all for that stuff.
Well, I've definitely heard of a bunch of services that basically they implant the ash remains into like the seedling of a tree. Mm-hmm. And they just plant the tree and the ash is just mixed in with the roots of the tree. That sounds kind of cool.
There's that, and then there's places too where I think you can. They don't embalm you or anything like that, but they, for lack of better, they'll like take the decedent and put them in like a tub or whatever in the tree in there as well, and then plant that whole thing, and then that way not just the ashes but the actual decedent is in the ground fertilizing the tree. Let's see here.
Wow.
Green burial adds conservation, reduction of carbon emissions.
Trying to see if I can get a picture too.
Yeah. Another thing that I had brought up when we were in preparation, so for talking about cremation stuff, when I went in 2022 to get certified up in Seattle with Cana, they had talked about this new form of cremation called alkaline hydrolysis.
Okay. And
they just briefly touched on it, but when I re-upped my certification last year, a good chunk of the test. Yeah, there you go. That's
body pods. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's always an option. Yeah. But they focused a good chunk of the test on it, and so yeah, it's this new system of cremation called alkaline hydrolysis, where basically what they do is it's like a kind of, instead of like a retort, it's like a long cylindrical metal steel tube, and they put the decedent in there and they mix it with water and chemicals, lye, and alkaline, and basically they heat it up to just below boiling and basically just jostle it around and shake it until there's nothing left except the bones, and then they kind of flush all that out. Yeah. And then they pulverize the bones that way. But instead of using like flame and incineration and stuff like that, it's just kind of, like I said, hot water and chemical, and then they just shake you until all that's left is the bones, and then
completely dissolved. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of like a newer thing. I have heard that there's a funeral home in Fort Collins that has one of these machines. But that's it. It's not really taking the storm. I mean, it's, of course it's a gentler process, it doesn't use, it's more environmentally friendly and everything like that. But my personally just learning about it, one of the things that stands out to me is it takes up to 400 gallons worth of water.
Wow.
In some instances, and can take up to, I think that when I was getting trained on it last year, they said there's two different types of machines. One of them uses like 600 gallons of water and can take 14 hours to do. And then there's another one that uses like 400 gallons of water and can be done in like 6 hours. So, those are kind of two big hiccups. At least in my opinion, that's a lot of water. For
it sure is,
for each decedent,
for
and then
everybody,
yeah, and then especially when we can cremate someone in 2 hours, 3 hours if they're really big, it depends on the size, but let's say 90 minutes to 2 hours, much better than 4 hours, all the way up to 16 hours. So, and someone was telling me that they had heard about a funeral home, or in the state of Washington. All the funeral homes or mortuaries and crematories that have this option, you have to also get a boiler license or certification, whatever they call it, because it's basically that's what it is. And so not only do you have to have the crematory operator certification and the licensed funeral director, you have to have that as well. So
I always wonder, the crematory makes sense. That's something that's been around for a long time. They've kind of refined that science. It's pretty simple in its construction and its function. But, who is out there coming up with new ideas to, dissolve bodies? How and where are they doing this? How do you become the kind of person where you're like, you know what, I'm going to, I guess it's just really an extension of medical research and design. It's just further down the chain than highly specialized medical tools or instruments.
Yeah, very similar, I would say. In fact, one of the what was one of the pictures I saw that they were doing? There's some guy here. It is right here on the Wikipedia page. Yeah, there's. On the Wikipedia page for water cremation, the first picture is these guys standing around one, and it says, an alkaline hydrolysis disposal system at the Biosecurity Research Institute inside of Pat Roberts Hall at Kansas State University.
There you go. Okay.
So, I guess it's kind of one of those things where, not, you can look at it as it ain't broke, so don't fix it kind of thing, but there's always someone out there that's but what if we could do it like this?
Well, it just seems like such an interesting job where it's I guess, you get bodies that were donated to science and they end up at this university's disposal and there's a guy there that's hey, let's try this new. But how do you did somebody fall into a water radiator and get dissolved? And at some point they were oh, maybe this ain't a bad idea. This kind of works pretty efficiently.
Where was the eureka moment?
But it does make sense if there's a school out there that's this is all that they do and they train the next generation of people who are going to be doing it and the surrounding jobs. Then at just some point, it's hey, let's experiment. We know how this one works, so let's try something else.
Well, and that's kind of one of the things too, where. Because of course we deal with decedents too that have, donated, through donors.
Sure.
Whether it be eyes, skin, bones, whatever. And that's a question I get, not a lot, but I've gotten definitely a number of times is, would you ever do something like that? And my answer is, yeah, absolutely. That's what I intend to do is, donate my body to science, let them do what they will. And then, because I just plan to be cremated anyways, so the way I always look at it is, med students always need someone to practice on. There's always new, or for situations like this, they need to come up with new ways to cremate people or whatever. Why not? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, that's crazy. I was just going to ask you that, and you kind of read my mind there. But, cremation just seems to be the way to go. I drive around New York and I see the amount of real estate that's taken up with, cemeteries, and it's crazy. And there's more people, and there's just always going to be more people. And it's the only reasonable thing to do, is to get cremated. And there's like a million different things. Like the vinyl thing, dude, I was like pretty sure I was going to expressly make it so that my body was pressed into a diamond, but the record sounds cooler. Okay. It sounds way more metal. And, if they do have to make like a metal print, like, the side that actually, compresses the vinyl, that to me is probably a cooler thing that would be a way that I'd want to be remembered, and not a graves. Like I have family members that are buried in some of those cemeteries around the city, and they're hard to get to. And like, even just to go visit my family's plot is like, it's a whole thing. It's like a multiple hour excursion just to get there. And
that's kind of another way I've always looked at it as well is, at least if I'm, excuse me, at least if I'm cremated, then you can, divvy up my ashes and my remains amongst, my sisters or other family members or whatnot. It doesn't have to be, you have to go to the specific one place to visit me. Like everyone can kind of have a piece of me.
Yeah.
In that sense. So that's always one thing that I've always kind of, or one way I've always looked at it. And, much to what you said, you asked about one of the things that's I never really thought of until this business, but yeah, the amount of space that cemeteries take up, that's one thing I never even considered until I started working this job, and I was like, and then someone one time asked me about the business model of it, and I was like, I mean, you sell plots of land, but it's it's kind of like a one-time thing. You know what I mean? And when you run out, there's only so many plots you can sell, and then that's it. And they pay one time for it. So
that's why it's so expensive.
That's why it's so expensive.
They really milk that. That whole industry is wild. Like dealing with somebody's afterlife care is like that bill can be more expensive than whatever medical procedures they needed to remain in the hopes of remaining alive. But it's something I think about it here all the time. I live near one of the biggest, might be the biggest cemetery in New York. And there's pockets of them kind of dispersed around. But for me, it's like, if I'm going to return to the eternal, I need to be completely dissolved. Like me being in a suit in a coffin with a headstone, it just never made sense to me. It's like, that's not how I came into this shit. I came into this life as jizz. Yeah. I need to be returned. Get back to that? I need to be returned to the smallest particle possible, because I didn't come in here in a suit in this fucking, huge metal box. I don't know. It just, and even the idea of like being in a body in a crypt, like that always creeped me out. It's like, how can I rest? How can I rest? I'm fucking on display in this crypt forever. Like, goddamn.
Well, and now that brings up another thing. I've only seen it, I think, twice, but there's been a couple times where I've seen, someone be exhumed after like 50 years, and cracking open the casket, and it's wild to see. It is. Even though you're embalmed, you don't look exactly the same way. It's pretty wild to see. So,
And it's so much more work for the bugs.
Yeah.
Like they gotta find a way. They gotta wait until the coffin degrades to the point at which they can find a way in. And I don't know, man.
They put the coffin inside the vault first. So it's a double layer. And then if you're in a mausoleum, you're above ground. So
no bugs. Well, I mean, there will still be some bugs, but nowhere near as much as nature.
And now that I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about some other, kind of going back to people who just don't talk about death or can't really accept it. I've heard stories of, there was one time that someone wanted to bury their loved one with a cell phone, because in 5 years or however many years it was, they wanted to call them and make sure that they were still dead after they've been buried. And honestly, my first thought was,
how long is the battery life going to
exactly
last?
I was like, that cell phone's going to run out of battery. But that's not going to work.
Well, whatever, dude. I mean, people.
Yeah, I mean, there's that, and then there was. I heard someone one time that they were. They wanted to bury or put their loved one in a mausoleum above ground because they didn't want the bugs or and everything to get to them, and they didn't want to have, if they did wake up, they didn't want to have them to crawl through the dirt and everything like that. But another thing is in a mausoleum, those things are just big enough for the casket with just like a little bit of. So let's say this person does wake up, they're not going to be able to open up the casket because there's no room to, so it's just little things like this that you hear people's ideas about with death, and you're just kind of like, okay.
Yeah, well, I mean, exactly. Like, grief takes on many forms, and it's hard. It's hard for some people, especially for people who have gone their whole life. Like, I'm never going to think about this. I'm not going to think about my or my loved one's mortality, and it's hard.
Yeah. Yep. It sure is. But that's what we're here for. So. Well,
and it comes for us all.
It does come for us all.
That's why I see, again, like, what you do is, it makes a lot of sense. Like, we were always able to joke around and be morbid, but it does make a lot more sense. It's always made more sense to me to be at peace with those things, and that's why I contemplate them. Mm-hmm. Like, people would maybe call you or I morbid at other points in our lives, and we were. Sure, yeah. Like, I'll give people that in comparison to general public, but I don't regret any moments that I've spent contemplating death in whatever way I was, because it's what makes me appreciate my life.
Yeah,
it's like the one thing that the things can be really bad. They can be going bad. It can be a bad day. And if I just remember to contemplate a little bit about death, or I'm confronted with someone else's mortality, and it's like, oh man, today ain't so bad, huh? Yeah,
that's true. I remember when I was younger, my dad went to a funeral directors convention, and he came back with a shirt for me, and it said, "Any day above ground is a good one," and it said that on a tombstone. I was always just kind of like, you know what? You're right.
That's pretty good. Yeah,
that's accurate. Good. That is accurate. So, yeah, it's not all bad.
Well, dude, Dave, thank you so much for coming on here and
of course,
getting into this conversation with me. I'm laughing that it took us this long to do it, but I'm really glad that we did it because, it's something we've talked about it a bunch. We've mentioned it on the show, but actually getting to sit down and commit an entire episode has been really fun. I mean, dude, there are multiple moments in here that I contemplated my life, dude.
Yeah. One last thing is, you were talking about how, you wanted to come in the same way, you went out ashes to ashes sort of thing. And similar to the, it comes for us all, thing. Sometimes, when I'm getting someone ready for their cremation, going over their paperwork and whatnot, usually when it's just about ready, everything's all good to go. Sometimes I'll just say, all right, you ready for your final chemical reaction?
Sick, dude.
Yeah.
That is freaking sick.
Yeah, just another one. So,
well, before we totally tuck out of here, I'm sporting the shirt. If you just want to there we go.
There it is. One of these nights.
If you also just want to give your shout outs there and tell people about where to check out the newest updates from what you guys are up to.
Yeah. So one of these nights we have a show here in Colorado Springs at one of the local clubs called Vultures. It's on Friday, June 20th. So here in a couple days. So if you're in the area, you can check that out. We're always working on new music, but it doesn't move as fast because Daniel now lives in Tampa. But he got into town Sunday, and actually here in a couple hours, I'm going to go kick it with them and start rehearsing and whatnot. Yeah, there it is. So
Love that.
But yeah, nothing, just being that we live in 2 different states, we're always still working on it, just at a slower process. So, but I've got a couple more ideas, and Daniel's going to come check them out while he's here this week.
And like you were lucky to be in the same room, but like he can do a lot of stuff now. He's kind of like self-sufficient, and doing this stuff remote, it takes a while to get a balance, but like you get a balance, and you get into like the mode of like, okay, now I have to contribute here, and then I send it over. I mean, Clint and I were doing that for a long time. I've been doing that with Prophet Nathan since fucking 2018. Yeah, we're gonna have the next set of music we release. No, the three of us were never in the same room at the same time at any point. So
yeah, well, and that's kind of funny too, because one of the songs that we have in the set list for on Friday night is one that we released, but Daniel and I have not sat in the same room and played that song together ever. It's like I just recorded the guitars here, sent them over to him. He did the drums, did everything, and it sounds great. But yeah, he and I have never sat down and actually played that song in the same room together.
There's like a chaotic element to making music that at first I was like really hesitant about it. But the more I did it, the more I was like, oh, I don't know what this person is going to send me. And then like they have no idea what I'm going to do on it. And for me, it's always much more fun to like exchange, like watch it develop remotely. Like when you're in the same room, you know what to expect. Or we're going to go to record this. It's going to sound like this. I know what this is. But when you've never heard the other person's parts, or when like you've never definitely doing it live, like when you've never played, like, oh shit, I layered all this shit when I was recording, but what am I going to play when I'm playing it live?
Part do I play?
Yeah, like how and which ones can I sing well while also playing? So it's like I don't know, it adds a very deliciously chaotic element to it. So
yeah, it's exciting, and like you said, it's always great hearing what Daniel does, because I usually just I start things off with an acoustic guitar, and just humming melodies and writing melodies and, vocals. Then I'll just like send him a rough idea. Nowadays I send him, track the guitars and everything as best that I can, everything that I can come up with.
A little more fleshed out.
Yeah. And then usually what he sends back is not even what I had in a good way. Because it's always just like, oh, wow, I never thought of that. Or, I didn't know that he was going to do that with the drums or whatever. And so, yeah, it's always super cool to get it back and hear it for the first time.
I mean, that is the exciting part. Like you guys, you choose your friends and you trust what the person who you're making the music with is going to do. Yeah. And it's just really special when you don't hear that, and like you're working on a song and getting it back and being like, oh wow, this whatever I thought was going to happen is usually completely different and way better. And it's just, I don't know, it's like a delayed reaction, because again, when you're in the same room, it's
you're building it together.
Yeah, you know what it is, and even when you go to record it, there's going to be very few surprises that are going to be like, yeah, whoa, that's so much cooler than I ever thought it would be. But
yeah, no, it's super cool.
You guys, I'm sure you guys will get into a swing of it, and that's awesome that you guys are still able to do pictures or play shows, do pictures.
Yeah, so it's pretty neat. The other day I said it's been 19 months since we've played a show.
Damn.
So.
Better shake off that rust, buddy.
Well, I have been. I think I'm going to be okay, other than the standard brain farts, which are going to happen, at every show.
Unavoidable.
I mean, even the the professionals, all the bands that we grew up and loved listening to, every night there's something that, even though they've played those songs thousands of times, they're just like, what's the next chord? So. But the thing about it is just as well, 90% of the time, it's stuff that no one else is going to notice except the other people in the band.
100%. They're going to be way too drunk to know that you missed that one little note, you know?
That's true. And we are playing last, so they're going to be good. And
they're going to be toasted. Yeah.
Yeah. I hope so. But, so yeah, that's what's coming up. We're excited about it.
Yeah, that's super cool stuff. I'm going to have, obviously, all those links I shared. I'll have those in the description. And, Dave, again, thank you so much. If there are any parting words you want to leave the audience with, this is your moment.
You know what? It comes for us all. Fucking
love that. This has been a Totally Legitimate Business Podcast. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you, Dave, for joining us on this convo. And next time, we'll get back to the tried and true, just talking about some weird conspiracy.
Yeah, other stuff that you can't talk to everyone about. Stuff to ruin a good family dinner.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's just stuff to traumatize any child.
Yeah.
That is it, folks. We'll talk to you later. Thank you.
This has been the Totally Legitimate Business Podcast. The end. With your host, James Oliva. Executive producers, Clint G and James Oliva. That's obnoxious. Sound design, mix, and master by James Oliva. Literally no one cares. For more Totally Legitimate Business, subscribe to our YouTube channel at Totally Legitimate Business or add us on TikTok at TLB Pod. When will this end? Thank you for listening. Now get back to work. Move it along, buddy.